the year of like COVID outbreak, all of 2020, things expanded really quickly. Like demand shot up in a way that no one could have planned for. On my development schedule, we didn't really have time to like build anything custom. And honestly, I found that like most of the developers of the Shopify apps are super accessible. I was concerned at some points that like some of these things might not be super well maintained or have like active development going on with them, but everything that we've used has had like I've had no trouble getting in touch with the developers. Really early in my time here was the back in stock restock alerts app, which that became a huge problem during COVID as we were constantly stocked out. During that year, that was like one of our top revenue sources was just the back in stock emails because that demand was so high. We've been using Returnly since last year. Impressed at how little like overhead work there was for us to do on our end. That was again like just being able to get a Shopify app, plug it in, and we still haven't done much like customization or much external code or anything on that. It just kind of works. I think what was great about building on Shopify for our business certainly is like now we're at this point where we're multinational, like our business has grown hugely in the last couple of years. Wouldn't have been able to get to this point without like the years of just like plug and play apps and like making things easy for the limited team that we did have on a combination of like out of the box apps and stuff that we built ourselves. So I think like it's been really easy to scale.
Thank you, Steve, for those words. It's great to hear how merchants are building powerful tech stacks using Shopify apps and themes. We'll be sharing more stories like these through 2022. Hello, bonjour, hola, ciao, guten tag, konnichiwa, ni hao. Welcome to Shopify Partner Town Hall. I'm Paul Gray, Product Marketing Lead for Ecosystem. It's certainly been a difficult few years. As the world comes out of the pandemic, we're facing international conflict, economic uncertainty, and continued technological and social change. We may not all be in the metaverse yet, but the way we work, play, and shop is changing. As a company, Shopify's commitment is to make commerce better for everyone. And in order to do that, our merchants need innovative solutions from partners like you. Solutions that help them start, grow, and scale. We've heard your feedback about recent town halls. Thank you. We've made this edition shorter and punchier. So here's the plan for today. We'll start with a What's New Reel, sharing some important product and program updates. We'll then switch to a live panel conversation. I'll be speaking with Fatima Yusuf, Director of Partnerships for Ecosystem, Mike Clark, Director of Product for Ecosystem, and Dan Ross, Head of Revenue and Merchant Experience for US East. They'll be sharing some insights and perspectives on what merchants are looking for and what partners can expect from Shopify this year. We'll then open the floor to all of you, so you can ask your questions about how we're building the safest, simplest, and most personalized commerce ecosystem in the world. Take a second and submit your questions via Slido, using the code ShopifyPTH or by scanning the QR code on screen. To connect with the community and chat in real time about what you're hearing today, join us on Discord. You can find the link to join in the description below. Ready? Let's get started.
Teams across Shopify are shipping new products in 2022. Let's check out some highlights. Every month, over 1 billion flows run on Shopify stores, automating processes from marketing to fulfillment to customer support. Starting this month, Shopify Flow will be available to advanced plan merchants. There's never been a better time for developers to build a flow connector that can kick off an automation or execute an action from a workflow. What will you build? Shopify is deprecating the Fulfillment API in favor of fulfillment orders. Access new features like local delivery and pickup, fulfillment holds, channel attribution, subscription models, and more. With nearly 500,000 Shopify merchants using local delivery, you can take advantage of fulfillment orders to help merchants fulfill products at the right time from the right locations. As shoppers go back to in-person shopping, we're improving workflows to help you support merchants using Shopify POS. Leveraging Order Editing API, merchants can edit orders as many times as needed to complete a refund or exchange. This update launches in spring, and we're inviting retail app developers to join the beta. We're also introducing a new POS space in the Partner Dashboard, giving a snapshot view of your retail clients, tools and resources to help sell Shopify, and to better support your existing clients. As more merchants adopt Online Store 2.0 themes, app developers can provide a seamless experience to integrate with merchant storefronts through theme app extensions. This simplifies the process of adopting, managing, and uninstalling apps without the need for theme-specific solutions or custom code removal. Learn more and start building with theme app extensions today. Business is also becoming more global, and merchants are looking to developers to update and build new apps that make it easier to acquire customers in new markets, convert them with localized experiences, and make international fulfillment easier. Learn more about how you can tap into global growth with Shopify Markets. Build themes for merchants around the world. As more merchants start, grow, and scale, it's the perfect time for developers to build fast, responsive, and feature-rich themes. We're proud to welcome 3 new paid themes. Drop is designed for audience anticipation, flash sales, and creating product hype. Be Yours represents a theme listing by our very first theme store partner based in Asia, Roar Theme. Bullet combines editorial layout with unconventional design and is created by Open Thinking, our newest theme store partners from Italy. Got some creative ideas? Get started and build a new theme. Shopify is always shipping. Keep up to date by subscribing to our What's New newsletter, our blog, and social channels. And of course, joining us at Partner Town Hall. Now, on with the show.
Mike, Dan, it's great to be with you today. I believe Fatima is on her way. We have a pretty big turnout. We're joined by existing partners as well as those that are interested in developing for Shopify. So looking forward to some great conversation today and to hear some questions submitted by our community. Now, running a successful business is only getting more difficult. Luckily, our merchants have access to the world's best partner community. But I think it'd be great to start out by hearing a little bit about our merchants, the challenges and the opportunities that they're facing. So Dan, maybe you can kick us off by sharing some of the trends that you're hearing from merchants.
Sure. So my name is Dan Ross. I get to lead the sales and merchant experience team for the US East. So we focus on merchants in the Eastern US that tend to be our largest, highest volume, highest complexity merchants. Very diverse set of merchants, but certainly some things that they all have in common as far as ways that they want to work with us to be more effective or simplify things that are complex in their business. So a few examples that come to mind. I've yet to speak to a merchant who believes that they've acquired too many customers. So anything acquisition related, driving traffic and demand gen is certainly a high priority right now. That's an area that's becoming increasingly difficult for them in cost and difficulty. The other is once they've converted that hard-earned traffic, ways to retain. So conversations on things like loyalty and building communities with their existing customer base. And then two areas that come to mind as far as really difficult and complex areas of their business that they're looking for help simplifying through our platform or through the ecosystem. One is increasing interest in them going global. So thinking through all the considerations and challenges that go into selling internationally, as well as fulfillment. Like supply chains are just so difficult right now, and managing through the logistics, fulfillment, returns, things like that. Those are sort of the top trends that we tend to hear the most.
Makes sense, yeah. So it really fits that funnel, acquiring traffic, converting them into customers on the site, managing fulfillment, and then maintaining operations and good relationships after that.
Exactly.
Mike, in your view, how do you think that fits for the developer opportunity?
I think actually Fatima just joined us.
Oh,
so perhaps she wants to share. She's the pro.
Put her right on the spot.
Hey everyone. Super excited to be here. Sorry about that. But basically, actually, everything that Dan talked about translates directly into a developer opportunity when you think about it. So the thing about how we build for Shopify, I know that actually a lot of folks are joining us new for the first time. So I want to make sure it's clear that when we think about the developer ecosystem, it really ties back to like the diversity of the merchant base that we have on the platform. So when you think about like Shopify has over 1.7 million merchants, each of those could sit in a different market, be a different size or scale, cater to a different audience, or sell a different type of product. And each of those segments has slightly different needs that they need through the platform, right? And so that's where our developer ecosystem really comes in, because different segments of merchants are going to have those different needs, and all of that creates, a massive flywheel impact opportunity for developers. And if you look at our app ecosystem and you look at all the categories, many of which are evolving and growing, each of those are like massive, billion-dollar markets sort of on their own. And then the trends that we're seeing on the merchant side, and due to like a lot of the recent trends in the industry that are happening overall, there's like micro pieces of that are growing in different directions. So as an example, like live selling took off really well in post-pandemic. It was already really big in Asian markets, and we saw it really take off in North American markets. And that has been like continuing to grow into a great space that's prime for a lot of developer opportunity. And just in general, there's, because of some of the stuff that Dan said, a lot more products that we're seeing that help merchants own their relationships with customers, because that's just getting more and more important in a world where they can't rely on some of the things that they had with in terms of ROI on ad spend and all that type of stuff. So a lot happening in the marketing category. The other piece is there's actually a lot happening in the blockchain category. So we're seeing like a crazy amount of demand in that space as well, and a lot of new developer innovation around there, and different financial segments associated. So that's been really interesting to see as well. And then, there's also a lot happening in the B2B space that we're seeing, and I'm seeing a lot of interesting activity with developers that are building for that segment of merchants, especially as we have like some global supply chain issues that have been happening. There's just a lot of problems to solve, especially as you scale and start selling internationally. So those are some of the things, but the best way to think about the developer opportunity is to tie it directly to the merchant trends and the opportunities they're really seeing in market. All that said, I know that Paul, we're really excited today to talk about specifically what that means, what it means for like the Shopify ecosystem and the App Store, and a lot of the fun things that we have planned. So I'm really excited that Mike is here. Mike is our Director of Product for Ecosystem, and he's actually going to share more about all the stuff that we have planned for the year to make the ecosystem more safe, more simple, more personalized, so that all of these segments of merchants have exactly what they need. Throw it over to you, Mike.
Great. So yeah, I think probably the first thing that I'd like to talk about is that safe piece. And it flows from a lot of what both Dan and Fatima described. And really, when we're thinking about safety, we're not just thinking about enforcement, right? Like, this isn't how do we get apps off that are causing us problems. That's obviously incredibly important that we safeguard our merchants and also end customers as well. But really what safety is about is figuring out the ways to create a level playing field for every developer. If you're doing the right thing, how can you make sure that you're showing up? How can we connect that to distribution? How can we give you the tools to do that? How can we do this automatically so that we can do more of these things at scale? And then also, when we have our great folks in our operations team that are thinking about safety all the time, how do we make sure that we're deploying them in the right spot to make sure that all of this gives you the tools that you need in order to be safe and have that level playing field for everybody? So some of the things that we've done recently in this space is we've started to automatically notify developers if there's a problem. So one of the examples where we've done that, which was a proof of concept for us, was if apps weren't installing properly. We know that's a problem for you because merchants aren't getting a great experience that you intend from your app, and you may not know about it. And then on the merchant side, they get really excited about an app that they want to install. And unfortunately, it falls down in that process and potentially creates some friction for them when they're trying to build our business. So we've actually started to identify some of the issues there, automatically letting you know so that you have a chance to fix it right away. So that's an example of, some of the automated work that we're doing. And the second one, which I know everyone here is probably very passionate about, from a review standpoint, reviews are critical for your apps, and reviews are a really important signal that merchants use in order to understand, what they're doing when they're selecting an app and comparing it to others. Now, if we have fake reviews in there, everybody loses trust. So what we've been doing recently is identifying fake reviews automatically, having a second layer where we review them and starting to remove them much more quickly from our app store. And so these are a couple ways that we're using both humans looking at these problems to help make apps better overall, increase that safety bar for everyone, and making sure that our ecosystem is just full of trust.
Another pillar that we talk about is simple. So making the ecosystem simpler for merchants to find the apps that they need to address the challenges and opportunities they're facing. But what does this actually mean? Fatima, can you share a bit of your perspective on what we mean by simple and some of the ways we're looking at that?
Yeah, I think it's really two things. One is simplifying, like when you're looking for an app, how to find it. So that could be in different surfaces across Shopify. But ultimately, like when you have a merchant come in, they could be, again, a merchant from any one of these segments that I spoke about. They might have specific needs based on how big they are, what market they're in, et cetera. And so how do we make sure that the right app is surfaced to the right merchant and that it's easy for them to find it? And so that's really where we want to make it simple for whoever you are, for whoever the merchant is, to be able to find exactly what they need across the app ecosystem. When it comes to the product specifics, I'll hand it back to Mike to talk about some of the things that we're shipping specifically in the area of making the ecosystem more simple.
Great. Yeah. So I think there's a couple elements to this that we're really excited about. The first one is we've made some pretty major improvements to search just recently. Actually, if you go to the homepage right now and you start to search for an app, you can actually see that there's autocomplete that's happening. And the cool part about that is oftentimes merchants know exactly what they need, or they're searching just because of behavior where they don't quite know what they need and they're searching at more of a generic category. Now, in both of those cases, in one sense, we're able to more proactively link directly to an app if it's quite obvious. And then on the other side, we're starting to drive people to our category pages, which have been vastly improved of late. And it goes and it tells a story about a specific category of apps. And we're able to identify when people actually really know what they're looking for specifically, or more broadly, when they just have some clues of what they think that they want to do. So that's one way that we're improving things. Another thing that we shipped recently is we really improved our homepages. And people go to that homepage when they're browsing, right? Like if they're going and they're saying, okay, I really need to find an app that fits a need for me. And what you've probably seen recently is we have recommendations that are much more effective at the top of that page, because we can start to know from attributes of merchants that they come to the store. We can start to predict some of their needs as a result right at that front door, so that they're not messing around and having to go through a number of different pages to understand what's going on. And then lastly, when people go down to make a decision and they're looking at the specifics of your app in your app details page, we've done a lot of research to understand how decisions are being made there and how clear we can get, increase the amount of media that looks great for your app on there, and then also just making sure that details are much more clearly laid out so that people can understand exactly what they're getting from your app and make a much better decision. All of those are much better for developers. And the more that you can understand how those work and their benefits, the more that you can benefit in your business.
Yeah, it's interesting to see it as a kind of a funnel as well. So similar to how merchants need to communicate and explain to shoppers in the right way, and then bring them to their stores and convert them and then serve them. Likewise, looking at the services that we have and how to help developers explain what it is their apps and themes do, how they work, what the advantages are, which use case it fits to, however that merchant is exploring. So that's a great segue, I think, then into the third pillar, which is personalization. So safe, simple, personalized. Dan, maybe in your perspective, as merchants are getting more global, more mobile, selling through more channels, just facing that complexity. What does personalization mean, do you think, from a merchant's point of view?
Yeah, it's, a funny way to think about it is just think of a very unpersonalized experience, right? No matter how compelling a review or referral, if you get to that surface and you don't see your language, your currency, it takes seconds before you're sort of made to feel like you are not part of the market that merchant cares about. So as our merchants try to go more global, they care deeply about creating that sort of connection and far beyond the basics of international selling with currency and language, getting to a local level of considering culture, and even down to a very personal, intimate level. Like, think of how good we've become as a society at ignoring ads, content, product recommendations. Like, what does it take for you to stop in the middle of your day and say, this deserves my attention? And so they want to have, based on everything that they can find out about a prospective shopper, they want to think about what do they know and how do they get as precise as possible with the content, the timing. So, as an example, if they know that Dan Ross is a white male, mid-40s living in Toronto, then just the Toronto piece alone will tell them that it's, mid-May is not the time to offer a product recommendation for a winter coat, even though somewhere else in their global market, that might be perfect timing.
Exactly. Fatima, your perspective about personalized experiences and becoming more personalized, like, what does that mean for developers and why should they care about that?
I think it really goes back to, Paul, what I was saying earlier is that merchant needs are diverse based on who they are and the markets that they serve and the people that they serve. And so the more specific that they can tailor their experience to who they're trying to attract is going to be really important for them, right? And we're seeing this, like, the example Dan used from Germany is great, because really, especially when we enter global markets, we see this the most. Like, it's you're just going to need a different set of partners that you're working with in each of those markets to make sure that you're resonating with the local buyers, that your product is fully integrated in a way that makes sense for that market. And so I think, personalized means a whole bunch of different things, because, for example, like, I might need a personalized, like, we have developers that are building for merchants that are doing their first sale and that are growing in early stages of their business. We also have developers that are working with almost exclusively with our Plus merchant base. And when those segments of merchants are looking for stuff, they're looking for different things. And so I just find that I think that the diversity of the merchant base is only going to continue to grow. The need for those merchants to attract specifically the buyers that they're looking for, being able to find and attract those buyers is going to mean a slightly different set of needs and experiences. And so personalizing, like, the recommendations is a really important piece of getting that right, so merchants can find exactly what they need.
I think, yeah, those are some great points you raised, like the different ways that you can slice an opportunity. Like, you can look at it by geography and what the needs of merchants in different geographies are based on laws or culture or whatever it might be, shipping, things like that. You can look at it by the stage of business. So if it's a merchant that's just starting out, what types of products are they going to need from the ecosystem to help them get going and make their first sales and grow from there? Versus if they're a larger merchant or a Plus merchant and they're really crushing it, what do they then need? And then the industry, so many different ways.
Yeah, and you touched on laws, which is a big one, and like taxes is another big one. Like, that looks super different, and if you're selling in multiple markets, it gets even more complex. Like, there's so many layers to going global, and B, to scaling, right? And we've got all those merchants on the platform, from like the folks selling honey to local buyers, all the way up to the merchants that are global and selling products all over the globe, and like the top folks in their vertical or category, right? So it's just like, this is such a zero sum, it's such a non-zero sum opportunity.
Yeah.
Sorry, is what I'm trying to say. Like, it's like commerce is massive, and sometimes I think people still underestimate how big it truly is and how much opportunity sits underneath it. And we're still only scratching the surface. Like, if you zoom out, in a lot of ways, we're still only scratching the surface. So there's just like infinite opportunity, and the diversity of the merchant segment shows you pieces of that. But it's like, it's just a really exciting time, I think, to be building for commerce.
Yeah, so much potential opportunity. And it's interesting, like I remember like we were talking about what are some of the themes and trends we think might happen in the future, and Dan, the feedback you're getting from the merchant community. And it's interesting when you look back and think, okay, what a couple of years ago, who would have predicted the importance of live selling, or buy online, pick up in store when a pandemic kicks in, or virtual fittings, and all of these require technology solutions to actually make that work. So the world continues on, and yeah, there's boundless opportunity. What is the next types of categories or technology? I think that's up to this community to build those.
Totally.
Yeah.
And just like I'll just close off with one other example. I know you asked me earlier, what are some of the trends that we're seeing? Like when we look at the live selling trend, we actually saw that in different markets outside of North America take off before it took off here. Another one that I find interesting is like group buying, for example, right? Like it's a different category than B2B because you're not necessarily you're selling in bulk, but not to another company, to a set of users that have decided to come together to buy like just, like let's say me and my friends all want to buy the same pair of red shoes, that we actually buy them as a group. And then because we're buying so many, we get a discounted rate, right? Like that we're seeing take off in different markets around the world. And so some of that stuff, it's just interesting to see like which markets pick it up first and what happens from there. Sure.
Mike, a question then for you. What do you think developers can do in this context of personalization to improve discovery and how they work with merchants?
Yeah, so I think a couple things that I can share about how that works today. If you look back in time, probably 6 to 7 months ago, pretty much everything that you saw in our app store was curated, right? It was filtered and curated, and it was done quite manually. Now we've started to look at the thousands of apps and sort of reduce some of the decision tasks that merchants have, and be able to automatically predict what these merchants want based on the uniqueness of their business, and then do that in a bunch of different contexts. So first is, the very general context would be looking at the homepage. I'm coming to the App Store, don't know what I need. Tell me what you think I need based on me being a merchant. The next is if I go to a category page, we're like, aha, you're looking at marketing. Let's constrain that world to marketing and tell you, again, based on the merchant that you are, what type of app do we think that you need because you're interested in marketing and who you are. Now we've expanded that beyond just the confines of the App Store itself. And if you think of all the different ways that we communicate with merchants and some of the contexts that they're in. So for example, if they're in a workflow in another part of our product, we're able to constrain to that context and start to share apps that are very relevant to that specific action that merchant is taking at that time. So if you think about all of the precision that we're starting to introduce, and in aggregate, we see much more success when we do this. So that means that all developer boats are being lifted. Now, because of that, we should be thinking about specificity and specialization. And that means things like, which market are you building for? That means, what use case are you building for? We know that there's infinite use cases for merchants, and depending on the type of business they have and where they sit. Let's really do our research to understand what those use cases are, and know that if you build specialized use cases, you're going to get promoted when we match that use case to that merchant. So just really think about those merchant problems, what they could be internationally in those markets that we think are really important as e-commerce is taken off everywhere. And that would be my biggest advice. Then the second is just making sure that, again, your app is very safe, because if there's a great bar of performance for you, you're going to be included in those recommendations. Also, if you keep things clear and simple in how you describe your app, and you have great imagery, and you have really good assets that you share, then again, you're past that bar where we think this is very high quality, and you're going to get promoted. So think about that specialization and context, the markets that we're in, and then also just having a really good bar of quality and safety, and then you're going to do great.
Thank you. Okay, so now it's time to move into our AMA to answer some questions that partners have submitted and upvoted on. So we will just queue this up. And What is the status on checkout extensions? We know the purchase upselling has been released. What else can we expect this year? Fatima, maybe if you can jump onto this one.
Yeah, I can jump in. So we do have some exciting checkout UI extension features coming in the next few months. And that's going to allow developers to build apps for checkout without having to rely on customizing checkout.liquid. So we're actually going to probably be dropping information soon on Discord, but keep an eye out for that. The team's really working really hard on getting that out soon.
Next question. Probably also for you, Fatima. Which B2B features are coming to Shopify this year and when? Customer-specific prices, customer-specific products. It's also a smiley face, so lots of excitement.
Yeah, I mean, B2B is one of the areas that I'm most excited about, so I share your excitement on this one. So pretty basically, again, I know it's a lot of coming soon, but coming soon, we will be providing the ability to better manage your business customers, offer personalized pricing and payment terms to each buyer, and providing a seamless B2B checkout flow, all centralized within the Shopify admin experience. So more information on that coming out soon.
Mike, I think this one for you. When can we expect GraphQL mutations to draft orders to support currency? Currently sending invoice through back office supports currency field, but the API does not smile.
Well, let's get those smiles, because don't worry, team is currently working very hard on draft orders supporting multi-currency, and we're really close to bringing this to partners in 2022.
Perfect. Okay, Mike, a lot of recent news about apps being delisted with zero transparency / communication from Shopify in these cases. How can we trust our careers on the ecosystem when cases like this are happening more often? What are you doing to improve this?
Actually, yeah, I'm really glad that you asked that. And we actually think of your career as an aggregate, right? Like we care a lot about individual developers too, but we also know that if we don't have trust in our marketplace, in our ecosystem, we're going to have a really big problem with merchants coming and actually, wanting to engage with these apps. So we think about that as a baseline, and we know that if merchants are successful and developers in general are successful, everybody is. So that's the first thing that I'd say about that. So preserving the quality and the integrity of the ecosystem is by far our #1 priority. Now, we've got some pretty clear app standards that are shared publicly. And if they're not met, our partner governance team, they're going to delist, in some cases, remove apps entirely from our platform. We don't want to do that often, obviously, but there's a lot of cases when we have to do that. Now, we understand communication is extremely important, and what we want you to know is the way that this works is we'll send you an email if the app is under investigation. The app will be delisted until that investigation is complete. In some cases, unfortunately, we intentionally don't share a lot of details as that investigation is underway, but communications are always given, and we want you to know where you are in the process. So sometimes when you don't get communications, what you need to know is make sure those comms are whitelisted from Shopify, and make sure you have really up-to-date account owner emails on that profile. We're really grateful that you're contributing, but we also need to make sure we have that minimum bar. And we're always going to communicate when these things happen. Make sure that the details are up to date for yourself, and that you're following terms of service and all those great things. And we're here to help make those more clear for you if there's an issue.
Thanks, Mike. I'd say this one's probably for you as well. So when do you plan to allow new connector apps? The current situation of requiring developers to get large third-party companies to sign your end recipient data acknowledgement form effectively blocks any developers from creating these apps.
We totally hear any frustration here for the approval process for connector apps. The intention is definitely not to block you, but we really want to make sure that merchants' data is very well protected. So to set up your app review for success, make sure you reach out to the end platforms and sign the acknowledgement forms prior to your submission to the App Store. That's a common problem. And then we'll make sure that this community more broadly is kept to date as we have future changes there, but make sure that you follow that step. That's a really important one, a common issue.
When will awareness ads be released for the Shopify App Store? This must be.
Cool. Well, I actually shared like a good amount of context for this answer in the lead up. So, so we focused on awareness ads last year for a variety of reasons. We wanted to make sure that there were different means that are comparable to other ad products, so that people could get awareness for apps and raise that intent that we talked about earlier before people actually go and engage with the app store more deeply. What we started to figure out was it was actually more effective for us to focus on our free tools. So in a lot of cases, we found a mismatch between merchant relevancy, like is this ad actually relevant to a merchant, and also the ROI to the developer. So we saw that that balance was a little bit off for that product. So we decided, okay, in the meantime, let's use the stuff that's actually going to help developers much more effectively, and funnel investment into free tools. So those automated recommendations, better search, those are going to benefit people without having to actually go and buy an ad. Buying ads is really great for a specific purpose, but we found that awareness ads weren't necessarily doing that job for us. Now, with that said, that doesn't mean that we're looking away from ads. The third area that we're going to be focused on is better search ad functionality. We know that search ads work really well, and we found enough specific improvements that we can make there that it was much more effective for us to just put our efforts there, and also those free tools that are recommended. So long answer of saying, we decided not to release them now. We decided to funnel our focus elsewhere because to reach the same means. But that doesn't mean that we're not going to work on it, because we think there's a lot of opportunity there. We just need to make sure that we get it right with the number of people that are looking at the problem.
Did we do this one already? A lot of new apps being, I think we covered that one.
Yeah. You can say it again, probably more people.
Such a blur in my head. Okay, that's next. Okay, great to see the works with Shopify Market's new collection, but why did Shopify choose sorting by curated order? Most relevant is being used elsewhere on the App Store, and I'd suggest to do the same with this collection. Mike?
Yeah, so all collections in the App Store are curated, and that's the first thing I like to say. The second is these are generally built around really specific use cases, and they tend to have a smaller number of apps than a category. So we want to give merchants the ability to sort by other criteria too, like most installed or newest. So it's a great question, and that's how it works.
See if we've got another. When can we expect? When can we expect GraphMQL mutations to draft orders to support currency? Currently, sending invoice through back office supports currency field, but the API does. I think that question's cropped a bit.
Oh, we did this one.
I think we did this one. Yeah. Let's check what's next. I think we have time for one. Okay, this is an interesting one. Dan, maybe for you, what's the biggest technology area you think developers should focus on? That's pretty broad. What would you say?
That is pretty broad. I don't know. I think my advice would be to walk a mile in the merchant's shoes and understand where some of their needs overlap with the strengths and experience that the developer has. So I think any of the categories I mentioned before, our merchants would want me, yelling on this call, like, please send help with acquisition, please send help with retention, fulfillment, getting more global, more mobile. Any of those categories certainly are, like, it is a very clear whether we're speaking to prospective merchants or existing merchants on the platform, those categories come up time and time again across all the industries of the merchants.
Fatima, anything you'd echo on that? Which technology areas? You mentioned blockchain and group buying. I've been reading a lot about like circular economies, like trade-ins and making that kind of stuff work. Anything else?
Oh yeah, I mean that's like growing a lot. I mean, even in what we're seeing in like Poshmark and some of those types of companies that are doing that, and we're seeing more of that happen within the merchant network as well. But I think, like, instead of sending everyone towards one specific problem, like I really think the way Dan talked about it is the right approach, where you just have to sort of walk a mile in the merchant's shoes and match it to the interests that you have from a creative perspective on what to build. At Shopify, what we're trying to do is open up the canvas as much as possible by building like APIs in all areas of the business so that you can take that and build into whatever you're doing, whether it's around like marketing to help with acquisition and retention, or whether it's around shipping and fulfillment enhancements, or blockchain and all the stuff that we're enabling on that side too. So we really want to open the canvas so that developers can go and choose their journey based on the merchants they really want to work with.
Mike, any last thoughts from you on technology areas or focus?
Yeah, I think probably one of the biggest things that's top of mind for me is just back to that safety category, right? There's so much attention on that across multiple industries. How do we safeguard people's privacy? And if we can get really good at safeguarding privacy and also really effective at the same time, that is just the recipe for winning. And that obviously is an international dimension to it as well. But figuring out how we can make merchants really successful in those areas is another big one.
For sure. Okay, Fatima, Mike, Dan, thank you. Thanks everyone for coming and joining us today and submitting so many great questions. We didn't have time to get to all of them, but we will be doing AMAs at every partner town hall this year. So keep those questions ready and make sure to keep an eye out for when we send the save the dates. If you haven't already, please join us on our social channels as well as our community channels. We have a partner Slack community, which is a great place to drop questions, connect with each other. We also have a partner Discord, and we have our community forums on the Shopify site as well. So we hope everyone enjoyed Partner Town Hall 2022 kickoff, the first of the year. Looking forward to seeing you next time. One last thing, we have a few exciting updates coming. There's going to be hopefully some in-person meetups coming the next few months. In the States, as well as in Italy and Spain, and probably more to come. So it'll be great to actually connect in real life as we can. Thanks again, everyone. Have a great day and see you next time.